Portsmouth Naval Shipyard Museum, New Hampshire. Present day. Summer morning light streams through the windows of the retired warship USS Thunderchild, illuminating dust particles that dance in the air like snow. The ship sits frozen in time, her gray hull still proud despite decades of peaceful harbor duty. An elderly man stands at the bridge rail, his weathered hand resting on a series of 14 deliberate marks carved into the metal. Each notch is precise, purposeful. Each one tells a story that fewer and fewer people remember. His name is Samuel Chen. He is 79 years old. The tremor in his fingers is new, a reminder that even the steadiest hands eventually succumb to time. But when he touches these notches, when his fingertips trace the grooves cut into cold steel 6 decades ago, the tremor stops. A group of high school students clusters around him, their faces glowing with the artificial light of smartphones they have been asked to put away. Most comply. Some do not. None of them understand yet why they have been brought here to this museum that smells of paint and old metal and preservative oil to listen to a man who was born before their grandparents. One of the students, a boy wearing a football jersey with his school colors, raises his hand. "Mr. Chen, what are those marks?" Samuel does not answer immediately. He is looking out past the rail, past the harbor, towards something only he can see. When he finally speaks, his voice carries the weight of memory. These are notches, 14 of them. The man who carved them did so with his own hands using a knife he carried in his pocket. Each notch represents an enemy warship destroyed. Each one represents approximately 200 men who went down with their ship. Fathers, sons, brothers, men who loved their families and believed they were fighting for something righteous. The students shift uncomfortably. This is not the triumphant war story they expected. The man who carved these notches, Samuel continues, suffered from chronic seasickness. For 20 years, he could not sleep lying down. Every night at sea, he sat upright in a chair with a paper bag beside him. Every morning, his crew found him there exhausted but alert, having spent the night fighting his own body while planning how to fight the enemy. Samuel turns to face the students now. His eyes are clear despite his age, sharp with the kind of clarity that comes from having witnessed things most people only read about. His name was Captain James Thornton, and this is his story. But more than that, this is the story of what America asked of men like him, what it cost them, what they gave willingly, and what we have forgotten. The football player lowers his hand. Nobody is looking at their phones anymore. It begins, Samuel says, with a terrible mistake. The year is 1943. August. The war in Europe has been raging for 4 years. The war in the Pacific for nearly 2. American boys are dying on beaches with names their mothers cannot pronounce. In factories across the nation, women build bombers and tanks while their husbands and sons fight thousands of miles away. In Washington, in offices with tall windows and mahogany desks, men in suits study maps and make calculations. They are fighting a different kind of war, one waged with the spreadsheets and procurement orders. Every ship built means 10 ships not built. Every dollar spent here is a dollar not spent there. The mathematics of total war is brutal and unforgiving. The Battle of the Atlantic is not going well. German submarines, the dreaded U-boats, hunt in wolf packs across the ocean. They strike at night, torpedoing merchant vessels loaded with food and fuel and ammunition. The convoys that cross from America to Britain grow larger, but so do the losses. For every 10 ships that sail, 2 never arrive. The U.S. Navy knows what it needs. Destroyer escorts. Small, cheap, mass-produced vessels specifically designed to hunt submarines. At $400,000 each, they represent the most cost-effective weapon in the anti-submarine arsenal. The Navy has ordered hundreds of them, but someone in naval procurement has a different idea. The Tribal-class destroyer, built in British shipyards to Royal Navy specifications. These ships are magnificent. 8 4.7-inch guns, top speed of 36 knots, sleek lines that slice through waves like a blade through water. They are designed for surface warfare, for gun duels with enemy destroyers and light cruisers. They are fast, powerful, and impressive. They are also completely unsuited for the mission at hand. Tribal-class destroyers cannot effectively hunt submarines. Their sonar is mediocre compared to dedicated anti-submarine vessels. Their depth charge capacity is limited. Their high speed makes them too loud, too easy for a submerged U-boat to hear from miles away. They are designed to chase and kill surface warships, not to escort slow-moving merchant convoys or play cat and mouse with submarines hiding in the dark water. And they are expensive, devastatingly expensive. Each one costs $2.5 million. For that price, the Navy could build 6 destroyer escorts, 6 ships that could actually do the job required. But naval tradition is a powerful thing. Admirals who grew up studying the Battle of Jutland, who learned their trade when battleships ruled the seas, believe that America needs ships that can fight surface actions. Ships with big guns and impressive speed. Ships that look like what warships are supposed to look like. The tribal class order goes through 4 ships, $10 million. Politicians in Congress are furious. Newspaper editorials call it wasteful. Military analysts question the strategic value. But the ships are already being built, and in wartime, momentum is difficult to stop. USS Thunderchild is the last of the 4 to be completed. She slides into the water at a shipyard in Newcastle, England, on a gray morning in June 1943. Her hull number is painted in white, her guns agleam with fresh oil. She is beautiful in the way that weapons of war can be beautiful, all lethal efficiency and barely contained power. She is also, according to nearly everyone who matters, a waste of money that could have been better spent elsewhere. The man chosen to command this expensive mistake is 40 years old. His service record is solid but unspectacular. He has 20 years of naval experience, mostly in smaller vessels. He has never commanded a major warship in combat. He suffers from a medical condition that should have disqualified him from sea duty decades ago. His name is James William Thornton. He was born in Portsmouth, New Hampshire in 1903. His father was a naval officer. His grandfather was a naval officer who died at the Battle of Manila Bay. The sea is in his blood, written into his DNA, passed down through generations of men who chose salt water over solid ground. It is also his enemy. James Thornton suffers from chronic debilitating seasickness. Not the mild queasiness that most people experience their first few times on a boat, the kind that passes after a day or two of getting used to the motion. Real seasickness, the kind that makes every moment at sea a battle against your own biology. He first experienced it at age 8 on a fishing trip with his father off the New Hampshire coast. While his father checked nets and lines, young James hung over the rail, vomiting until there was nothing left to vomit, then dry heaving until his ribs ached. His father, a stern man not given to sympathy, told him it would pass. It did not pass. At 12, James tried again. Same result. At 15 again. At 18, when he entered the Naval Academy at Annapolis, despite his father's concerns, he spent his first training cruise in absolute misery. Other midshipmen laughed. Instructors questioned whether he had made the right choice. James Thornton discovered 2 things during that cruise. First, that seasickness does not disqualify you from naval service if you can perform your duties despite it. Second, that if you cannot sleep lying down because the motion makes you sick, you can sleep sitting up. For 20 years through training ships and patrol boats and destroyers, James has slept in a chair. Every night at sea, he positions himself with his back straight, his head supported a bucket or bag within reach. He does not complain about this. He does not seek sympathy. He simply adapts. His fellow officers find it strange, even disturbing. Some question his fitness for command. How can a man who cannot conquer his own stomach lead other men in combat? But those who serve under James Thornton learn something that his medical condition obscures. While his body rebels against the sea, his mind masters it. James thinks in angles and vectors and fuel consumption rates. He can calculate the speed and heading needed to intercept a moving target faster than most men can work it out with paper and pencil. He knows ammunition expenditure down to the shell. He understands that naval warfare is not about courage or aggression, but about mathematics, about putting your ship in the position where your guns can fire and the enemy guns cannot. While other officers study naval history and dream of glorious battles, James studies accounting. He reads engineering manuals. He memorizes the specifications of every ship in the German Navy, every torpedo boat and destroyer and cruiser they possess. He knows their top speeds, their armament, their fuel capacity, their typical tactical deployments. His classmates at Annapolis called him the calculator, not with affection, but James has something else, something that matters more than a strong stomach or a glamorous reputation. He has a reason to come home. Her name is Eleanor Hayes. They met in 1928 when James, then a junior officer recovering from a training accident, spent 3 weeks in the Naval Hospital at Portsmouth. Eleanor was a nurse there, 24 years old, dark-haired, with eyes that saw through pretense. Most people pitied James for his seasickness. Eleanor did not. On his second day in the hospital, she asked him a simple question. If the sea makes you sick, why do you stay? James had never articulated the answer before, not even to himself. But sitting in that hospital bed, looking at this woman who seemed genuinely curious rather than judgmental, he found the words. Because Thorntons do not quit. Because my grandfather died serving his country, and my father served despite losing him. Because there is work to be done, and I am capable of doing it, and my stomach does not get to decide whether I am worthy. Eleanor smiled, not the patronizing smile of someone humoring an invalid, but a real smile of understanding. Then I suppose, she said, you will need to be twice as good as everyone else, because you are fighting 2 battles while they only fight 1. They married 2 years later. It was a small ceremony in the Portsmouth chapel where 3 generations of Thorntons had been married. Eleanor wore white. James wore his dress uniform. His father, usually stern and critical, cried. They had 10 years together. Good years, mostly. James served on various ships, slowly climbing the ranks. Eleanor worked at the hospital when he was at sea, wrote letters every day when he was gone. They talked about children, about someday, about when the world was less uncertain. In 1940, Eleanor got pregnant. James was assigned to a training command on shore, which meant he could be home for the birth. They prepared a nursery in their small house near the naval yard. Eleanor knitted blankets. James built a crib working with wood the way his grandfather had taught him, measuring twice and cutting once. On July 15, 1940, Eleanor went into labor. James waited in the hospital corridor, the same corridor where they had met 12 years before. The labor was long, too long. When the doctor finally emerged, his face told James everything before the words did. I am sorry, Captain Thornton. We saved the baby. We could not save your wife. Eleanor Hayes. Thornton died from complications of childbirth at age 36. The baby, a girl, survived. James named her Grace because it was the name Eleanor had chosen and because it seemed important to honor that choice. He held his daughter for the first time in the same hospital where he had met her mother. Grace was small, wrinkled, red-faced. She cried constantly. James had no idea what to do with her. Eleanor's sister, Helen, unmarried and childless, offered to help. She moved into the house, took over the nursery, fed Grace, and changed her, and walked her when she cried at night. James watched this from a distance, numb with grief, overwhelmed by the reality that he was now a widower and a father and had no idea how to be either. 3 weeks after Eleanor's funeral, the Navy offered James a promotion and a new assignment, a larger ship, more responsibility. It would mean going back to sea, leaving Grace with Helen for months at a time. James went to his commanding officer and requested a shore assignment. He explained the situation. He said he needed to be home for his daughter. The commanding officer, an admiral who had known James's father, listened carefully. Then he said something James never forgot. Captain Thornton, you understand your pain. I lost my own wife young. I know what you are facing. But here is what I also know. The Navy needs good officers. Your country is on the edge of war, whether we admit it yet or not. Men like you, men who understand tactics and can lead under pressure, are rare. Your daughter needs you, but thousands of other daughters need you too. They need you to be at sea, keeping them safe. James took the promotion. He went back to sea. He left 3-year-old Grace with Helen, who raised her with love and patience, while James sent money and wrote letters and came home when he could. In his cabin, late at night, sitting upright in his chair because lying down makes the nausea worse, James writes in a journal. Grace, if you ever read this, know that every day I am at sea is a day I would rather be with you. But I am trying to build a world where you can grow up safe, where you will never know war the way this generation knows war. That is worth any sacrifice, even this one. He never shows these entries to anyone, but he writes them faithfully, a record of a father's love and a father's absence, hoping that someday Grace will understand. By August 1943, Grace is 3 years old. She calls Helen Mama because that is who raises her. When James comes home on leave, Grace is shy around him, uncertain of this tall man in the uniform who claims to be her father. It breaks something in James every time, but he does not let it stop him. The Navy assigns him to USS Thunderchild. It is, everyone agrees, either a great opportunity or career suicide. The ship is controversial, expensive, politically toxic. If James succeeds, he will be celebrated. If he fails, he will be blamed for wasting taxpayer money and contributing to the defeat of the U-boat menace. James accepts the assignment without hesitation. In Plymouth, England, in a harbor crowded with warships preparing for the invasion that everyone knows is coming, but nobody will name, USS Thunderchild sits at anchor. She is beautiful and deadly and utterly purposeless. German destroyers, the ships she was designed to fight, stay in port. The surface war in the Atlantic is over. The submarine war continues. James boards his new command on a gray morning in August. The crew is assembled on deck. 240 men, most of them young, most of them wondering why they have been assigned to this expensive mistake instead of to convoy duty where the real war is happening. James stands before them in his uniform, his face showing nothing of the nausea he already feels from the gentle motion of the anchored ship. He does not give them a speech about glory or patriotism. He gives them the truth. Gentlemen, I know what you are thinking. This ship costs $2.5 million. That money could have built 6 destroyer escorts that the Navy actually needs. You think we are going to sit in this harbor burning fuel and wasting time while the real war happens elsewhere? You think this assignment is punishment or bad luck? He pauses. The crew watches him uncertain. You are right to think those things. But here is what else is true. This ship has 8 4.7-inch guns. She can make 36 knots. She carries enough ammunition to fight for hours. And in 4 months, there is going to be an invasion. The largest amphibious assault in human history. Before a single soldier can land on those beaches, the English Channel needs to be cleared of every German surface vessel, every destroyer, every torpedo boat, every mine layer. James lets that sink in. That is our job, not hunting submarines, killing surface ships. And when that mission comes, we will be ready. Not because this ship is expensive, not because we have fancy guns, but because every man on this vessel would know his duty so well, he can perform it in his sleep. We are going to train harder than any crew in this flotilla. We are going to run drills until you can load and fire those guns blindfolded. And when the time comes to fight, we are going to prove that Thunderchild is worth every penny. In the crew, a 19-year-old gunner named Samuel Chen listens carefully. Sam is the son of Chinese immigrants born and raised in San Francisco. He joined the Navy the day after Pearl Harbor, lying about his age because he was only 17 and consumed with the kind of rage that comes from seeing your country attacked. Sam has a gift. At the gunnery range, he hits targets other shooters cannot see. His hand-eye coordination is supernatural. His ability to calculate angles and adjust for wind and motion is instinctive. The gunnery officers at training noticed. They assigned him to the main battery on Thunderchild, to one of the big 4.7-inch guns that represent the ship's primary armament. Listening to Captain Thornton speak, Sam feels something he has not felt since joining up. Purpose. This strange officer who sleeps sitting up and gets seasick but never complains is offering them something real. Not empty promises of glory, but the hard work of preparation and the certainty of mission. After the speech, as the crew disperses to their duties, Sam approaches the captain. Sir, permission to speak freely. James looks at him, really looks the way good officers do when an enlisted man has something to say. Granted. Sir, they say you get sick every time you go to sea. Is that true? James does not bristle at the question. He answers it honestly. Yes, every time for 20 years. But you stay anyway. I stay anyway. Sam nods, processing this. Then he says something that James will remember for the rest of his life. Then I guess the rest of us do not have any excuse to quit either, sir. For 5 months, Thunderchild sits in Plymouth Harbor training. James runs his crew through gunnery drills until they can load and fire in complete darkness. He runs them through damage control exercises until every man knows how to patch a hull breach or fight a fire. He runs them through night operations until they can navigate and fight without lights. The crew complains. They are exhausted. Their hands bleed from handling shells. They want to be fighting, not drilling endlessly in harbor. But James is relentless. He knows something they do not yet understand. When the shooting starts, when men are dying and ships are burning, training is the only thing that will keep them alive. Muscle memory, automatic response. The ability to perform complex tasks while terrified. In Washington, Commander Wallace Preston reviews Thunderchild's expenditure reports. Preston is 50 years old, a career bureaucrat who has never commanded a ship in combat. His job is oversight, ensuring that Navy resources are not wasted. He sees James's ammunition expenditure during training and is appalled. He sends a message. Captain Thornton, your training expenditures are excessive. 200 rounds per gunnery drill is beyond standard doctrine. Justify this waste immediately. James's response is brief. Commander Preston's standard doctrine assumes the enemy does not shoot back. I am training my crew to kill efficiently under combat conditions. Respectfully, I would rather waste ammunition in training than waste lives in battle. Preston is not satisfied. He begins documenting every decision James makes, every expenditure, every deviation from standard procedure. He is building a case evidence for a court-martial if Thunderchild fails to perform. James knows this. He does not care. He has seen war. He knows that when the shooting starts, nobody cares about paperwork. In his cabin at night, sitting in his chair with a paper bag beside him, James writes letters to Grace. She is 3.5 now. She cannot read yet. But Helen reads the letters to her, and Grace asks questions. Daddy, why do you have to go on a boat? Why cannot you stay home? James's letter back is simple. Grace, Daddy is on this boat so that little girls like you can grow up safe. So you will never have to be afraid. That is the most important job in the world. I love you more than I can say. He seals the letter, addresses it, places it in the outgoing mail. Then he opens his journal and writes, If I die out here, I hope Grace understands. I hope she knows that I loved her, that every day away from her was torture, but that some things matter more than personal happiness. Freedom matters, safety matters. The kind of world she will inherit matters. That is worth any sacrifice, even missing her childhood. In January 1944, Allied intelligence confirms what James predicted 5 months earlier. Germany is concentrating its remaining surface fleet in the English Channel. Destroyers, torpedo boats, fast attack craft. They know an invasion is coming. They are preparing to slaughter the invasion fleet before it reaches the beaches. Captain Raymond Sullivan, commander of the 10th Destroyer Flotilla, calls his captains together for a briefing. Sullivan is 55, a veteran of the Pacific campaign, scarred and hard-eyed and absolutely competent. He does not waste words. Gentlemen, Operation Overlord is scheduled for early June. Before those landing craft hit the beaches, this channel needs to be cleared. Every German surface vessel needs to be sunk or driven back to port. If we fail, soldiers die. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. He looks around the room at the assembled captains. His eyes linger on James. Captain Thornton Thunderchild was built for exactly this mission. You have been training your crew for 6 months. Are you ready? James stands. He is calm, certain. Sir, Thunderchild cost $2.5 million. A German Elbing-class torpedo boat cost $2.6 million. If I sink one, we break even. If I sink two, America profits. I intend to sink as many as possible. Sullivan smiles. It is not a pleasant smile. Then let us go hunting, Captain. But before James can lead Thunderchild into battle, he must do something that goes against every tactical manual he has ever read. Something that will define not just his command, but his entire understanding of what war truly costs. On the night of April 23, 1944, James sits alone in his cabin. Tomorrow, Thunderchild will sortie for the first time against enemy vessels. Intelligence reports 3 German torpedo boats operating in the channel. T-29, T-24, T-27. Combined value $7.8 million. Combined firepower enough to devastate a convoy. James takes his grandfather's knife from the desk drawer. The same knife passed down through 3 generations of Thornton men. The blade is old but well-maintained, sharp enough to cut steel if you press hard enough. He goes to the bridge. The watch officer nods but says nothing as James walks to the starboard rail, finds a smooth section of metal and begins to carve. The knife bites into steel with the sound like a whisper. James cuts a single notch, precise and deliberate. Then he stands back looking at what he has done. Lieutenant George Martinez, the executive officer, appears at his elbow. Sir, what are you doing? James does not look up from the notch. Making a memorial. Memorial for what, sir? We have not sunk anything yet. James finally turns to face his XO. His expression is serious, weighted with something Martinez does not yet understand. That is exactly why I am making it now, Lieutenant. Tomorrow we are going hunting. If we succeed, approximately 200 German sailors will die because I give the order to fire. 200 men with families, fathers, sons, brothers, men who believe they are fighting for something righteous just as we do. He touches the fresh notch with his fingertip. I am carving this mark before I kill anyone, before I see the enemy, before the heat of battle makes it easier to forget what I am about to do. I want to remember that sinking ships is not a tactical problem to solve or a number on a spreadsheet. It is a choice to end lives, and I want to make that choice consciously, deliberately, so that I never forget the weight of it. Martinez stares at the notch, then at his captain. Sir, with respect that seems like it will make command harder. Remembering every man you kill. Yes, James says quietly. It will. But I would rather carry that weight than forget it. Because the day I stop feeling the weight of these decisions is the day I should no longer be in command. He folds the knife and returns it to his pocket. Tomorrow when we sink our first enemy vessel, I will carve another notch. Not to celebrate, to remember. Every ship we destroy, I will add another mark. And when this war is over, when I look at these notches, I will know exactly what they cost. Not just in dollars or tactical victories. In human lives, 200 per notch. That is what victory costs, Lieutenant, and I refuse to forget it. Martinez is quiet for a long moment. Then he nods slowly. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted. Sir, I have served under 6 captains. You are the first one who seems to understand what we are actually doing out here. Most of them talk about glory and honor and defeating the enemy. You talk about the karma, about the men we are going to kill. Because those men are real, Lieutenant, just as real as Sam Chen and every sailor on this ship. War does not change that. It just forces us to choose which men live and which men die. And I will not dishonor the men we kill by pretending they do not matter. That night, James does not sleep. He sits in his chair, fighting nausea, thinking about the notch on the rail, about the 200 men who will die tomorrow if Thunderchild succeeds, about Grace, 3 years old and growing up without him, about Eleanor, who saw his weakness and loved him anyway, about the fact that in less than 12 hours, he will give orders that will end lives, and there is no way to do this cleanly or without cost. At 0400 hours, he writes one more journal entry. Tomorrow I become something I never wanted to be, a killer. The Navy will call it combat, command, tactical necessity. But the truth is simpler and harder than that. I will order my men to fire guns that will kill other men. And I will do this not because I hate the Germans, but because if I do not, they will kill American soldiers trying to liberate Europe. That is the choice, not between good and evil, between one set of deaths and another. I choose to protect American lives, but I will remember what that choice costs. I will carve notches into steel so that I never forget the weight of command. 200 men per notch. 200 families who will receive telegrams. 200 mothers who will weep. That is what my victories will cost. And I accept that burden. But I will not pretend it is anything other than what it is. He closes the journal, sits in silence, waits for dawn. At 0530 hours, the watch officer knocks on his door. Sir Captain Sullivan signals all ships to prepare for sortie. Enemy contacts reported at bearing 270, range 30 miles. James stands. His legs are stiff from sitting all night. His stomach churns with nausea that has nothing to do with the motion of the ship. Sound general quarters. All hands to battle stations. We hunt in 30 minutes. The hunt begins. The English Channel that night is not romantic. It is cold and black and merciless, a stretch of water that has swallowed men and ships for 1,000 years. Tonight, April 24th, 1944. It prepares to claim more. USS Thunderchild cuts through the darkness at 32 knots. On the bridge, James Thornton stands with his hand gripping the rail, knuckles white, not from fear, but from nausea. He has already vomited twice into the paper bag his executive officer keeps replacing without comment. The crew has learned not to mention it. Below decks in the forward magazine, sailors pass shells hand to hand in a human chain. Each round weighs 45 pounds. Each one costs the American taxpayer $12.30. Commander Preston has documented this cost in triplicate. At gun mount 3, Sam Chen checks his rangefinder for the fifth time in as many minutes. His hands are steady, but his heart hammers against his ribs. This is real. After 6 months of drilling, of loading and firing at imaginary targets tonight, they will shoot at something that shoots back. The radar operator calls out ranges in a steady voice trained to remain calm no matter what the numbers say. 18,000 yards, 16,000, 14,000. The German torpedo boats are running southeast at 24 knots, heading for the French coast, where shore batteries can provide cover. James does not pursue at full speed. This surprises his executive officer, Lieutenant George Martinez, who expects the aggressive tactics James has drilled into them. Sir, if we do not close faster, they will reach coastal waters. James is calculating in his head variables and vectors that exist only in his mind. German torpedo boats are fast but lightly armored. They rely on speed and torpedoes to compensate for weak guns. Standard German doctrine is to launch torpedoes at maximum range, then flee while the enemy evades. The key is not to catch them quickly, but to catch them in a position where they cannot employ their primary weapon effectively. Maintain current speed. I want them to think they can escape. The range closes. 12,000 yards. 10,000. At 8,000 yards, the German commander makes his decision. T-29 turns to engage, laying a smokescreen, while T-24 and T-27 continue fleeing. Classic screening tactic. One ship sacrifices itself to buy time for the others. James expected this. He has read German tactical manuals captured from previous engagements. He knows how they think. All guns target the screening vessel. Fire on my command. At 6,000 yards, Thunderchild opens fire. The night explodes into orange flame. 8 4.7-inch guns speak simultaneously, their muzzle flash turning night into day for a fraction of a second before darkness returns. The sound is apocalyptic, a physical force that hammers eardrums and shakes the deck. Sam Chen fires his gun, loads, fires again. The rhythm is automatic, now drilled into muscle memory by 6 months of relentless training. Aim, fire, load, adjust, fire. His crew moves like a machine, each man knowing his role, no wasted motion. The first salvo lands short waterspouts erupting 200 yards in front of T-29. James calls the correction calmly. Up 200, right 100. The second salvo straddles the target. The third salvo hits. On T-29, men are dying. A 4.7-inch shell penetrates the forward deck and explodes inside the crew compartment. 16 German sailors cease to exist in an instant, vaporized by the explosion or shredded by shrapnel. Their names are Wilhelm, Hans, Friedrich, Ernst, Stefan. They have families in Hamburg and Berlin and Munich. None of this matters now. The German return fire is ineffective. T-29's guns are smaller, her crew distracted by the impacts, her aim disrupted by the need to maneuver. Shells fall wide, landing harmlessly in the water. One comes close enough that James can see the splash in the moonlight. At 4,000 yards, Thunderchild's gunnery becomes devastating. Shell after shell slams into T-29. Her forward gun mount explodes ammunition, cooking off in a secondary blast that throws debris 100 feet into the air. Fire spread across her superstructure. Her speed drops from 24 knots to 18 to 12. Sam Chen fires his 43rd round of the engagement. It strikes T-29 amidships below the waterline. The torpedo boat begins to list. At 01:28 hours, after 43 minutes of continuous firing, T-29 rolls over and sinks. Of her crew of 198 men, 23 survive. They float in the oily water screaming for help in German, knowing that help will not come. On Thunderchild's bridge, James watches the enemy ship disappear beneath the waves. He feels no triumph, only a hollow certainty that he has done what was necessary. Cease fire. All engines ahead 1/3. Prepare to recover survivors. Martinez looks at him in surprise. Sir, the other 2 boats are escaping. I know, but those men in the water are no longer combatants. We will recover who we can. They pull 11 German sailors from the water. Young men, most of them shivering and terrified and grateful to be alive. They are taken below, given blankets, and hot coffee treated with the same care Thunderchild's crew would want if positions were reversed. Later in his cabin, James takes the knife from his desk drawer. The same knife his grandfather carried, passed down through 3 generations of Thornton men. He goes to the bridge rail to the spot next to the first notch he carved yesterday and carves a second. The knife bites into steel with the same whisper sound. This notch matches the first. Precise, deliberate, permanent. Sam Chen, passing by on his way to the head, stops and watches. He remembers the captain carving the first notch before the battle. Now he is carving the second after. Sir, one before we killed, one after. Will there be more? James does not look up from his work. Yes, there will be more. T-24 and T-27 escaped tonight, but they will return, and when they do, I will add more notches, not because I want to, because it is necessary. He finishes the second notch, touches both of them, feeling the grooves cut into cold metal. Wilhelm, Hans, Friedrich, Ernst, Stefan. 173 more whose names I do not know, but God knows them. And these notches will remind me that they existed, that they were men, not numbers, that victory is not free. Sam thinks about this for a long moment. Then he asks the question that matters. Sir, do you regret it? James meets his eyes. No, but I will not forget it either. There is a difference. T-24 and T-27 escaped that night, but James knows they will return. Damaged ships return to port. Repaired ships return to battle. It is only a matter of time. 4 days later, on April 28th, the telegram arrives. James is in his cabin reviewing ammunition expenditure reports that Commander Preston has demanded when the radio officer knocks on his door. The young man's face is pale. Sir, priority message for you, personal channel. James takes the envelope, opens it, reads the words that every parent fears. Grace critically ill, stop pneumonia. Stop, doctor recommends your immediate return. Stop, condition unstable. Stop. Helen, the telegram is dated 2 days ago. 2 days that Grace has been sick while James was hunting German torpedo boats. 2 days that she might have needed her father and he was not there. James sits down in his chair, the same chair where he sleeps upright every night, fighting seasickness and planning battles. He reads the telegram, again as if reading it differently might change the words. Grace is 3.5 years old. She has lost her mother already. Now she might lose her life, and James is 3,000 miles away, commanding a ship that most people think should not exist. Martinez finds him there 20 minutes later, still holding the telegram, staring at nothing. Sir, Captain Sullivan requests your presence at the flotilla briefing in 30 minutes. James does not respond immediately. He is calculating a different kind of mathematics now. A return to the United States would take minimum 3 weeks. By ship, it could be 5. Grace might be recovered by then, or she might be dead. And while he is gone, who commands Thunderchild? Who leads the crew he has trained for 6 months? Martinez, if you had to choose between saving one life you love or potentially saving thousands of lives you have never met, which would you choose? The question hangs in the air. Martinez, 28 years old, unmarried, no children, has no answer. James stands, folds the telegram carefully, places it in his desk drawer. Tell Captain Sullivan I will be there. He writes a letter that night, not to Grace, who cannot read, but to Helen. Take care of Grace as if she were your own daughter. If she dies while I am here, and she is there, I will live with that guilt forever. But if I abandon my post and American soldiers die because German ships were not cleared from the channel, I could not live with that either. I am trusting you with the most precious thing in my world. Please save her. He does not mail the letter. Instead, he gives it to Captain Sullivan in a sealed envelope with instructions to send it only if James is killed in action. Sullivan, who lost his own wife to cancer 5 years earlier, understands completely. The briefing that night reveals new intelligence. T-24 and T-27 have been joined by fresh vessels. The German Navy is concentrating force for a major operation. They know the invasion is coming. They are preparing to contest it with everything they have left, and they are bringing bigger ships. The morning of April 29th begins with fog. Thick channel fog that reduces visibility to 200 yards and turns the world into a gray mystery. Thunderchild and her sister ship OSS Mohawk patrol together, radar sweeping the darkness, hunting for targets that may or may not be there. Mohawk's captain is Commander Robert Chen, Sam's older brother. Bobby Chen is 31, a Naval Academy graduate, everything Sam aspires to be. The two brothers have not seen each other in 8 months, but they exchange brief messages over the radio, professional and warm. At 23:30 hours radar contact, two vessels at 18,000 yards heading northwest at high speed. T-24 and T-27 returning to finish what they started. But this time the Germans have learned. This time they will not screen and flee. This time they will fight. Sullivan gives the order. Thunderchild and Mohawk will engage in a pincer movement, approaching from different angles to prevent the German ships from concentrating fire on a single target. What follows is 26 minutes of controlled chaos. The Germans launch torpedoes, early 8 of them, cutting through the water at 45 knots. Standard doctrine says destroyers should turn away, present, the smallest target evade at maximum speed. James does something different. He slows down. All engines ahead 1/3. Martinez cannot believe what he is hearing. Sir, torpedoes in the water. I know, maintain speed. James has calculated the math. Torpedoes run on compressed air, which gives them limited range at high speed. Maximum effective range is 6,000 yards. Current range it is 8,000. If Thunderchild maintains slow speed, the torpedoes will run out of fuel before they arrive. If she turns and flees, presenting her stern, the chase will bring the torpedoes into effective range. It is a gamble based on engineering specifications and mathematics. If James is wrong, Thunderchild dies. 4 torpedoes pass 200 yards to starboard. 4 pass to port. None detonate. They run out of fuel and sink harmlessly into the channel. All ahead flank, close and engage. Thunderchild surges forward. At 2,000 yards, her guns open fire. Sam Chen fires shell after shell. The rhythm automatic, his world reduced to aim and load and fire again. Around him, his gun crew moves like dancers choreographed by 6 months of brutal training. T-27 takes 3 hits in the first minute. Her forward magazine explodes a pillar of fire that reaches 100 feet into the night sky. She begins to sink immediately, but T-24 has found her mark. The German torpedo crosses 1,200 yards of open water in exactly 27 seconds. It strikes USS Mohawk on her starboard side below the waterline, directly into her boiler room. The explosion is catastrophic. Steam and fire erupt through the ruptured hull. Men are scalded alive, killed instantly by superheated vapor that cooks them where they stand. Mohawk's ammunition magazine ignites 3 seconds later. The secondary explosion tears the ship in half. She begins to sink bow first, her stern rising into the air as 240 men scramble for life. On Thunderchild's bridge, James watches through binoculars as his sister ship dies. He can see men jumping from the stern, some on fire, all desperate. The water is 42 degrees. Without rescue, hypothermia will kill them in 30 minutes. T-24 is fleeing toward the French coast, damaged but mobile. James can catch her. He can run her down and destroy her avenging Mohawk, and adding another kill to Thunderchild's record. Every tactical manual says pursue. Every doctrine says kill the enemy while you have the chance. Every instinct James has developed in 20 years of naval service says finish the mission. But there are men in the water, American men, brothers and fathers and sons who will die if someone does not help them. James gives the order that will define his career. Helm pursue T-24. Flank speed. Thunderchild chases the German torpedo boat for 8 minutes, closing the range from 4,000 yards to 1,500. At that distance, James fires a single salvo. The shells straddle T-24-1, hitting her stern, damaging her rudder. The German boat lurches her steering, compromised, and drives straight onto the rocky French coast, her hull tearing open on submerged rocks. She will never sail again. Helm come about. Return to Mohawk's position. All hands prepare for rescue operations. Martinez understands now. Sir, German shore batteries will have ranged our position. I know, we have 15 minutes. Make them count. Thunderchild returns to the burning wreckage of Mohawk at 00:58 hours. The sea is full of men. Oil from the ruptured fuel tanks burns on the surface in patches, creating islands of fire that the swimmers must navigate around. The screams of wounded and dying sailors cut through the night. German artillery opens fire at 0100 hours. The first shells land 600 yards to starboard. The second salvo lands 400 yards to port. The German gunners are walking their fire onto target, adjusting based on splash patterns. They will find the range in 2 or 3 more salvos. Launch rescue nets, all hands not on damage control or gunnery man the rails. Sailors throw rope nets over the side. Thunderchild's crew leans over the rails, reaching down to grab oil-covered hands, pulling exhausted men from the freezing water. Some of the rescued are wounded, missing limbs, or burned or bleeding from shrapnel. They are hauled aboard anyway, passed to the medical teams that have set up emergency stations on the deck. German shells fall closer. 300 yards. 200. The explosions create waterspouts that drench the rescue crew's cold Atlantic water mixing with oil and blood. Sam Chen is at the rail searching faces. He is looking for his brother. Around him, Thunderchild sailors pull Mohawk survivors aboard one after another, a human chain of hands and rope, in desperation. Then Sam sees him. Bobby Chen floating face down in oily water, his uniform burned, his hair singed away. Sam does not hesitate. He jumps. The water is shockingly cold, 1,000 knives of ice stabbing through his clothes. Sam swims 3 strokes, grabs his brother, turns him face up. Bobby is breathing barely, his eyes are closed. Burns cover half his face. Hands reach down from Thunderchild's deck. They grab Sam, grab Bobby, haul them both aboard. Sam cradles his brother's head while the medic cuts away burned uniform. Bobby's eyes open. He sees Sam. Tries to speak. Sam, get. Captain Thornton. Tell him. Get clear. Bobby, you are going to be okay. We got you. Tell him, get clear, save the ship. Those are Commander Robert Chen's last words. He dies on Thunderchild's deck at 0114 hours, held by his younger brother, having given an order to save the ship that rescued him. At 0116 hours, James gives the order to withdraw. They have recovered 47 men from Mohawk's crew. 128 went down with the ship. The final German salvo lands 50 yards off the port beam as Thunderchild clears the kill zone at 30 knots. Shrapnel peppers her hull, but causes no critical damage. Below decks in the makeshift medical bay, Sam Chen sits beside his brother's body. He is not crying, not yet. He is too numb for tears. Around him, medics work on wounded sailors, doing what they can with limited supplies and no morphine left. James comes down from the bridge once they are clear of danger. He finds Sam sitting there, oil-soaked and shivering, one hand on his dead brother's shoulder. Sam, I am sorry. Sam looks up. His eyes are hollow. He told me to tell you to get clear, to save the ship. I know, he was thinking of his crew. You came back for us. You could have killed 24. You came back. James kneels beside the young gunner. For the first time in 6 months of command, he lets his crew see him as something other than their captain. Sam, I am going to tell you something that I hope you never have to learn yourself. Command means choosing. Sometimes you choose who lives and who dies. Tonight I chose to save 47 men instead of killing another 200 Germans. Some people will say I made the wrong choice, that I let the enemy escape, that I put sentiment above mission. He pauses, looking at Bobby's body. I do not care what those people say. Your brother is dead. 128 good men are dead, but 47 are alive because we turned back. 47 families will get their sons and husbands back. And if I had to make the choice again, I would make it the same way. Sam nods slowly. Then he asks the question that needs asking. Sir, does it ever get easier? Making those choices. James stands. His knees hurt from kneeling on the cold deck. His stomach churns from the motion and the smell of blood and fuel oil. His heart aches for this young man who just lost his brother and for the daughter 3,000 miles away who might be dying while he stands here. No, Sam, it never gets easier. You just get stronger at bearing it. That night, back in Plymouth Harbor, James goes to the bridge rail. He takes out his grandfather's knife, carves the 3rd notch for T-27, then the 4th for T-24, even though she was only grounded and not sunk because she will never fight again, and her crew died when French resistance fighters attacked the beach vessel. 4 notches now, approximately 800 men dead because he gave orders to fire. He does not carve a 5th notch for Mohawk. American ships do not earn marks on this rail. Only enemy vessels. Only the cost he chose to inflict, not the cost inflicted upon him. The news of Mohawk's loss reaches Plymouth Harbor within hours. The news of Grace's recovery takes 3 days longer. When James finally receives the telegram telling him his daughter has survived pneumonia, he is in his cabin preparing for the next patrol. He reads it 3 times. Then he puts his head in his hands and allows himself 30 seconds to feel relief before returning to duty. In Washington, Commander Preston reads the after-action reports. 2 German torpedo boats destroyed. 1 American destroyer lost. The math does not favor the engagement. He begins drafting a memo questioning Captain Thornton's tactical decisions. But Captain Sullivan, who has more combat experience than Preston will ever possess, sends his own report. It includes testimony from the 47 survivors. Every single one of them states the same thing. Captain Thornton saved their lives when doctrine said to pursue. Captain Thornton put men above mission. Captain Thornton is the kind of officer they would follow into hell. Sullivan's report concludes with a recommendation. Not a court-martial, a commendation. Preston's memo goes into a filing cabinet unread. On June 9, 1944, 3 days after D-Day, German destroyers attempt to reach the invasion fleet, the largest surface action in the Channel since the war began. Z-32, a powerful German destroyer with 5 5.9-inch guns and veteran crew, leads the attack with 2 smaller vessels. Thunderchild intercepts them at 22:17 hours. What follows is 94 minutes of running gun battle across 15 miles of ocean. Z-32 is fast and well commanded. Her captain has fought in the Baltic and the North Sea. He knows his business, but James knows his business too. And Sam Chen, promoted to chief gunner after his brother's death, is shooting with the accuracy of a man with something to prove. At 0340 hours, Z-32 runs aground on the French coast, her hull torn open by sustained fire, her crew abandoning ship. Thunderchild and 2 British destroyers continue firing until the German vessel is a burning wreck that will never sail again. The other German ships are sunk by torpedoes from British vessels. All 3 enemy ships destroyed. No Allied losses. James carves his 5th notch that night. His hand does not shake. By August 1944, USS Thunderchild has participated in sinking 14 enemy vessels. The exact count depends on how you assign credit for actions involving multiple ships. James's standard is conservative. If Thunderchild fired the killing blow or forced the vessel to ground where it was destroyed, it counts. If other ships contributed equally, it does not. His knife carves notches for T, 29 to 27 to 24 Z, 32, 2 German minesweepers, 1 patrol car, 2 submarine chasers, and U. 971, a submarine that Thunderchild hunted and destroyed in a 4-minute surface engagement after depth charges forced it up. 13 notches. Not 15, not 12. 13. Each one represents approximately 200 men dead. Each one represents millions of dollars of German war material destroyed. Each one represents American soldiers who will land on European beaches without being massacred by torpedo boats. But on August 5, 1944, James learns the true cost of those 13 victories. Operation Kinetic, a raid against German coastal convoys supplying isolated garrisons in Brittany. Thunderchild leads the attack against 3 targets: minesweepers M263 and M486, patrol boat 5414. The first 2 die quickly, overwhelmed by Thunderchild's superior firepower. James carves the 13th and 14th notches for them, bringing his total to 14 enemy vessels destroyed. But V414 fights back. At 0238 hours, a German 105mm shell fired in desperation by a gunner who knows he is about to die arcs through the night sky and falls toward Thunderchild. It strikes Y turret, the rear gun mount, where Sam Chen and his crew are loading their 41st round of the engagement. The explosion is immediate and total. The shell penetrates the turret's armor and detonates inside. 20-year-old Seaman William Parker from Idaho and 19-year-old Seaman Harold Brooks from Texas die instantly, vaporized by the blast. 8 others are wounded, including Sam, who takes shrapnel in his left leg and burns across his back. For the first time in 13 months of combat operations, American sailors die aboard USM Thunderchild. James hears the explosion from the bridge. He sees smoke rising from Y turret. For the first time in any engagement, he leaves his post and runs. He finds Sam crawling out of the ruined turret uniform, smoldering. Behind him, Parker and Brooks lie dead, their bodies barely recognizable. James kneels beside them. These boys, 20 and 19, young enough to be his sons. They joined the Navy to serve their country. They trained for 6 months under his command. They trusted him to lead them wisely. And now they are dead because he gave the order to engage WWII 414. Medics arrive. They pull Sam away, begin treating his wounds. They cover Parker and Brooks with blankets, a temporary dignity, before the bodies can be properly prepared. Martinez arrives out of breath from running. Sir V 414 is fleeing. We can still catch her. James looks at his executive officer. Then he looks at the two bodies. Then he stands and walks back to the bridge. His voice when he gives the order is ice. All guns, target V 414. Maximum rate of fire. I want nothing left. They catch the German patrol boat at 0253 hours. Thunderchild fires 112 rounds in 13 minutes. V-414 disintegrates under the barrage, her hull torn into pieces too small to identify. No survivors. James does not carve a 15th notch. V-414 does not earn that distinction. That was not warfare. That was execution. The funeral for Parker and Brooks takes place on Thunderchild's deck 2 days later. James delivers the eulogy himself. His voice does not break, but his eyes are wet. William Parker and Harold Brooks came from small towns in Idaho and Texas. They joined the Navy on the same day. They served on the same gun mount. They died together. They were 20 and 19 years old. I carved 14 notches into the ship's rail for 14 enemy vessels destroyed. I will not carve a notch for these two young men. They are not victories. They are the price. In his cabin that night, James receives a letter from Grace. Helen has been teaching her to write. The letters are careful, childish. Dear Daddy, I miss you. When are you coming home? I drew you a picture of a boat. Is that your boat, love, Grace? James holds the letter for a long time. Then he writes back. Dear Grace, yes, that is my boat. I will come home as soon as I can. I am sorry I was not there when you were sick. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Your Daddy. He seals the letter, addresses it. Then he takes out his journal and writes the entry he has been avoiding. 2 boys died today because of decisions I made. I will carry their names for the rest of my life. William Parker, Harold Brooks. They deserve to go home. They deserve to grow old. Instead, they have cold steel decks in a naval cemetery. This is the cost that nobody talks about when they talk about victory. This is the price of those 14 notches. He closes the journal, sits in his chair, does not sleep. The war in Europe will continue for 9 more months. Thunderchild will survive it all. But for James Thornton, the war has already exacted its price, and no amount of enemy ships sunk will ever balance that ledger. The telegram from Commander Preston arrives on August 8, 1944, 3 days after William Parker and Harold Brooks are buried at sea. James reads it twice, not because he does not understand the words, but because he cannot quite believe them. Captain Thornton, stop. Thunderchild reclassified multi-role destroyer, stop. Tribal class doctrine updated Navy-wide. Stop your tactics now. Standard training, stop. Ammunition expenditure complaints withdrawn. Stop respectfully. Preston. James folds the telegram carefully and places it in his desk drawer next to the one about Grace's pneumonia. 2 pieces of paper that represent 2 different kinds of victory. One he earned through mathematics and aggression and the willingness to spend bullets instead of lives. The other he did nothing to achieve except pray and hope and trust that his sister-in-law could do what he could not. He takes no satisfaction from Preston's admission. Parker and Brooks are still dead. Victory does not resurrect the fallen. September 1944 brings transfer orders. James is being rotated stateside for what the Navy calls rest and recuperation, but what everyone knows is political necessity. He has become too valuable, too symbolic. If he dies in some random engagement in the Channel, the Navy loses not just a capable commander, but a propaganda asset. James does not want to go. Thunderchild is his ship. Her crew is his crew. Leaving feels like abandonment, like breaking a promise he made 13 months ago when he stood on her deck and told 240 men they would be ready. Captain Sullivan delivers the orders personally, coming aboard Thunderchild on a gray morning when the harbor smells of fuel oil and rain. James, you have done enough, more than enough. Let someone else carry the load for a while. They stand on the bridge together, 2 men who have seen too much talking in the shorthand of shared experience. Sir, I feel like I am running away. Sullivan shakes his head. You are not running. You are being preserved. There is a difference. The Navy needs officers who can teach what you have learned, who can take your tactics and spread them across the fleet. You cannot do that from the bottom of the channel. What about my crew? Your crew will be fine. I am assigning Commander Richard Hayes to take over. He is solid, competent. He will take care of them. James knows Sullivan is right. That does not make it easier. The farewell ceremony on September 15th is brief. James hates ceremony, hates being the center of attention. He speaks for 90 seconds, thanking the crew for their service, telling them they are the best sailors he has ever commanded. He does not mention the 14 notches or the 2 men who died. Everyone aboard already knows those numbers by heart. Sam Chen, still recovering from his wounds, stands at attention with the rest of the crew. His left leg is stiff from shrapnel damage. He will carry a limp for the rest of his life, but he stands straight, saluting as James descends the gangway for the last time. As James reaches the dock, Sam breaks formation and limps after him. "Sir, wait." James turns. Sam catches up, breathing hard from the exertion of moving quickly on his damaged leg. "Sir, I just wanted to say, you brought me back when my brother died. You came back for all of us. I will never forget that." James looks at this young man who has aged a decade and 13 months, who has lost his brother and nearly died himself, and still stands here in uniform ready for the next mission. "Sam, you are a good sailor and a good man. Take care of the crew for me, and when this war is over, go home and live a life worth living." That is what Bobby would want. That is what Parker and Brooks would want. They shake hands. Sam salutes one last time. James returns it, then walks away without looking back, because looking back makes leaving impossible. The transport ship that carries James across the Atlantic is slow and crowded and safe. No German submarines operate in these waters anymore. The Battle of the Atlantic is overwon by convoys and escort carriers and the destroyer escorts that Preston wanted instead of tribals. James spends the crossing in his cabin, sitting in his chair at night, vomiting into a bag, writing letters to Grace that he will hand-deliver when he arrives. Portsmouth, New Hampshire in September 1944 is exactly as he remembers, and completely different. The town has grown swollen with war workers and military personnel. The streets are crowded, rationing is in effect. Everyone seems to be in uniform or working in some capacity that supports the war effort. Helen meets him at the train station with Grace, who is 4 years old now and does not quite remember the man in the naval uniform who claims to be her father. She hides behind Helen's skirt, peeking out with Eleanor's eyes. James kneels down to her level. "Hello, Grace. I am your daddy. I know I have been gone a long time, but I am here now." Grace considers this. Then she asks the question that breaks his heart. "Are you going to leave again?" James wants to lie, wants to tell her no, he will stay forever, he will never leave her again. But he cannot lie to his daughter. "Yes, but not for a while. And I will write to you every week. And when I come back, we will spend every minute together." Grace thinks about this. Then she steps out from behind Helen and takes his hand. Her fingers are small and warm and trusting. "Okay, but you have to read me stories. Aunt Helen says you know lots of stories." James picks her up, feeling the weight of her, this small person who carries Eleanor's eyes and smile and the entire future he is fighting to protect. "I know some stories, and I will tell you all of them." He has 3 weeks of leave, 3 weeks to be a father instead of a captain, to sleep in a real bed instead of a chair, to eat meals that do not come from a ship's galley. He takes Grace to the park, reads her books about talking animals and brave children, teaches her to recognize ships by their silhouettes, pointing at drawings in his naval manuals. Helen watches this with quiet approval. She has raised Grace for 4 years, given the child stability and love when James could not. She does not resent him for this. She understands that some men are called to service and some sacrifices are necessary. On the last night of his leave, after Grace is asleep, Helen and James sit in the kitchen drinking coffee. "She is a good child," Helen says. "Smart, curious. Eleanor would be proud. You have done more for her than I ever could. I do not know how to thank you." "You do not need to thank me. She is family. And James, you are doing what Eleanor would want. She always knew what you were, what you had to be. She never asked you to be anything else." James holds his coffee cup and thinks about Eleanor, about the woman who saw his chronic seasickness and decided it did not matter, who married him knowing he would spend more time at sea than at home, who gave him Grace and died doing it. "I miss her every day." I know, but you are honoring her memory by being who you are, by protecting other people's daughters so they can grow up safe. The next morning, James says goodbye to Grace again. It is no easier the second time. She cries, clinging to his neck, asking why he has to go. He has no answer that a 4-year-old would understand. His new assignment is not combat command. The Navy assigns him to the Pacific Fleet headquarters in San Diego, where he will teach tactics to destroyer captains preparing for operations against Japan. It is important work, necessary work, but it feels like a demotion after commanding Thunderchild. He teaches for 8 months, classroom after classroom of officers, most of them older than he is, most of them skeptical that this lean captain who gets seasick has anything to teach them. Then he shows them the numbers. 14 enemy vessels destroyed in 13 months, 2 American sailors lost, 47 enemy survivors rescued. The skepticism evaporates. The tactics he developed in the Channel spread across the Pacific Fleet. Aggressive close-range engagement, overwhelming firepower concentrated on single targets, rescue operations even under fire. Other captains start winning battles using methods James pioneered, and they do not even know his name. In May 1945, Germany surrenders. The war in Europe is over. Thunderchild, still commanded by Richard Hayes, has added 2 more kills to her record. German submarine chasers caught trying to flee to Norway. Her final tally is 16 enemy vessels destroyed across 2 years of operations. In August 1945, Japan surrenders. The war is over, completely finally over. James receives orders to report to Washington for reassignment. The Navy is shrinking, transitioning from wartime to peacetime footing. Thousands of ships will be mothballed or scrapped. Hundreds of thousands of sailors will be discharged. The question everyone asks is what happens next. James spends the next 15 years answering that question. Commander to captain in 1946, captain to rear admiral in 1952. Postings that take him to Norfolk, to San Diego, to Pearl Harbor. Always moving, always serving, always writing letters to Grace that arrive a week late and feel inadequate. Grace grows up. She graduates high school in 1958, having been raised primarily by Helen, while her father serves his country. She chooses nursing school, following in her mother's footsteps, and James attends her graduation in his uniform, proud and regretful in equal measure. I am sorry I was not there more, he tells her after the ceremony. Grace, 18 now and wise beyond her years, takes his hand. You were where you needed to be, Dad. I understand that now. You were protecting all of us. In 1956, James becomes Chief of Naval Operations, the highest position in the United States Navy. Admiral James Thornton, the man who could not sleep lying down now, commands every ship in the fleet. It is a long way from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a long way from Thunderchild's Bridge. He serves 4 years in that position, advocating for the same principles he learned in the Channel. Invest in capable vessels rather than cheap ones. Train crews to excellence rather than adequacy. Remember that every number in a report represents a human life. He retires in 1960 at age 57. Grace is married by then to a good man named Robert, who works as an engineer. They give James a grandson, also named James, and watching this small boy play in the yard of Grace's house, James feels something he has not felt in 20 years. Peace. He still gets seasick. Even at 57, even after 40 years of naval service, his body rebels against the motion of ships. When Grace asks him if he regrets choosing a career that made him physically ill for 4 decades, he tells her the truth. Every single day, and every single day, I would make the same choice again. But while James retires to a quiet life of grandfather duties and consulting work for the Navy, USS Thunderchild continues her service. She patrols the Mediterranean during the Cold War, a symbol of American naval power in waters where the Soviet Union seeks influence. She participates in NATO exercises. She trains new crews who never meet James Thornton but learn tactics he pioneered. By 1963, she is old. Her machinery is worn. Her design is outdated. The Navy has newer destroyers, faster ships, vessels equipped with missiles and modern radar. A review board convenes to determine her fate. Of the 27 tribal-class destroyers built during World War II by the United States, Britain, Canada, and Australia, 13 were sunk in combat. 13 have already been scrapped. Only Thunderchild remains floating in the Philadelphia Naval Yard, waiting for a decision. The recommendation is unanimous. Scrap her, sell her for metal, use the proceeds to fund more modern vessels. She has served honorably, but her time has passed. The recommendation goes to Congress for final approval, a formality in most cases. Obsolete warships are scrapped regularly. Nobody objects. But then the letters start arriving. Veterans of Thunderchild's wartime service, now in their 40s and 50s, write to their congressman. They tell stories of a ship that never failed them, a captain who came back under fire to rescue survivors, battles won against superior odds. They argue that Thunderchild represents something worth preserving. Sam Chen, now 39 and running a machine shop in Portsmouth, organizes a petition. He contacts every surviving member of Thunderchild's wartime crew he can find. 200 signatures. 2,000. 10,000 including civilians who have never served but understand that some symbols matter. The campaign grows. Newspapers pick up the story. Local television stations interview veterans. Someone discovers that of 27 tribal-class destroyers, Thunderchild is the only one left. If she is scrapped, an entire class of warship disappears from history. Grace Thornton, now 25 and working as a nurse in Boston, reads about the campaign in the newspaper. She calls Sam Chen, this man she has never met who served under her father. Mr. Chen, I am Grace Thornton, Admiral Thornton's daughter. I want to help save Thunderchild. Tell me what to do. Together they organize a lobbying effort. Grace uses her father's connections writing letters to every admiral and naval official she can name. Sam uses his veterans network mobilizing former crew members to testify at hearings. The message is simple. Thunderchild matters. Her story matters. Do not let her die. In March 1966, Congress holds a hearing on the matter. Sam testifies, telling the story of the Mohawk rescue of his brother's death and James Thornton's decision to save 47 men instead of pursuing glory. Grace testifies, reading her father's letters, sharing the personal cost of command. Then James himself appears. He is 63 years old, retired 6 years, and he has not spoken publicly about Thunderchild since leaving her in 1944. But Grace convinced him to come to add his voice to the chorus asking for preservation. The committee chairman recognizes him. Admiral Thornton, you commanded Thunderchild during the Channel campaign. In your professional opinion, does this vessel merit preservation? James stands to answer. His voice is steady, the same voice that gave orders under fire that commanded through nausea and grief and impossible choices. Senators, I commanded Thunderchild for 13 months. In that time, she sank 14 enemy vessels worth over $15 million. She rescued 47 men under enemy fire. She lost 2 sailors in combat. Every one of those numbers is carved into her bridge rail, not as trophies, but as reminders. He pauses, making eye contact with each committee member. If you scrap Thunderchild, you scrap those reminders. You tell future generations that sacrifice is forgettable, that service is disposable, that the ships and men who defended this nation can be reduced to scrap metal when they are no longer convenient. I am asking you not to do that. Some things are worth preserving, even when preservation seems impractical. Thunderchild is one of those things. The silence in the hearing room is absolute. Then the committee chairman speaks. Thank you, Admiral. This committee will take your testimony under advisement. 6 months later, Congress allocates $500,000 for Thunderchild's preservation. She will be transferred to Portsmouth Naval Shipyard Museum in New Hampshire, converted to a museum ship open to the public. The only tribal-class destroyer preserved anywhere in the world. The dedication ceremony takes place in June 1968. James attends with Grace and his grandson, little James, who is now 5 years old and fascinated by the big gray ship. Sam Chen is there, limping on his bad leg, but standing straight in his dress uniform. They stand together on Thunderchild's bridge, 3 generations of one family and the sailor who served under the Admiral 24 years ago. The 14 notches are still visible on the rail, protected now by a glass case with a plaque explaining their significance. Little James points at the notches. Grandpa, why are there marks on the ship? James kneels down to his grandson's level, the same way he knelt for Grace 24 years earlier. Those marks are reminders, Jamie. They remind us that winning a war costs something, that every victory has a price, and that we should never forget the people who paid that price. Did you make those marks? Yes, a long time ago. Why? James looks at Sam, who nods permission for honesty. because 2,800 men died so that you and your mother and every child in America could grow up safe. I made those marks so I would never forget their names, so I would remember that they were real people with families who loved them, just like I love you. Jamie considers this with the seriousness of a 5-year-old confronting something beyond his understanding. Were they bad men? No, they were men doing what they thought was right, just like we were. War does not make people bad. It just forces them to make terrible choices. Over the next 35 years, more than 1 million people visit USS Thunderchild. School groups and veterans and tourists and history enthusiasts walk her decks, tour her gun mounts, stand on the bridge where James Thornton commanded through 13 months of combat. The 14 notches become famous, photographed, written about in history books. In 2003, the National Park Service designates Thunderchild a National Historic Site, ensuring her preservation in perpetuity. She is the only tribal-class destroyer with that designation. The last survivor of a class of ships that changed naval warfare. James Thornton dies in 2000 at age 97. He has outlived most of his contemporaries, outlived the century he was born into. Grace is with him at the end, holding his hand in the hospital room. His last words are about Thunderchild. Take care of the ship. Make sure people remember, not just the victories, the Kitcheron. Grace promises. She becomes a board member of the Thunderchild Museum, dedicating her retirement years to preserving her father's legacy. Sam Chen lives until 2005, dying at age 79. Before his death, he donates his wartime journals to the museum, detailed accounts of life aboard Thunderchild of James Thornton's leadership of the night his brother died. These journals become primary source material for historians studying the Channel campaign. In 2003, on a summer morning, exactly as the one where our story began, Sam Chen gives his final tour of Thunderchild. He is 79 years old, his hands shake with age, but when he touches the 14 notches, his fingers steady. A group of high school students listens to his story. The same story he has told 100 times about a captain who got seasick and a ship that everyone said was a mistake and 13 months that proved them wrong. When he finishes, a student asks the question that matters. Mr. Chen, what happened to all the people on this ship, the crew? Sam smiles. Most of us made it home. We grew old, had families, lived the lives that Parker and Brooks and Bobby Chen and all those German sailors could not live. That was the whole point. And Captain Thornton. Admiral Thornton retired in 1960, lived to be 97, had a grandson who became a naval officer, died knowing he had done his duty. Did he ever stop getting seasick? Sam laughs, a sound like dry leaves rustling. No, never. Right up until the end, being on a ship made him sick. But he did it anyway. That is what courage is. Not the absence of fear or weakness, but doing what needs to be done despite them. As the students file out preparing to leave, Sam notices a man standing at the back of the group. 40s military, bearing something familiar in his face. The man approaches. Mr. Chen, I am James Thornton, Jr. The Admiral was my grandfather. Sam's eyes widen. I see him in you, the eyes, the way you stand. He spoke about you often, about the night on Mohawk, about how you kept fighting even after Bobby died. He said you were the best gunner he ever commanded. Your grandfather saved my life, saved 47 lives that night. A lot of captains would have chased the German boats. Let us drown while they scored another kill. He did not do that. James Jr. nods. He told me once that those 14 notches were not about killing. They were about remembering. He said every enemy ship had 200 men who loved their families just like he loved us, and that forgetting that cost would dishonor everyone who died. Sam touches the glass case protecting the notches. He was right. That is why I keep telling this story. So people remember what war really costs. Not just the Americans who died. All of them. They stand together in silence, these two men connected by history and loss, in the memory of a captain who could not sleep lying down, but never stopped fighting. Finally, James Jr. speaks. Mr. Chen, I brought something. My grandfather asked me to give it to you before he died. He said you would know what to do with it. He hands Sam a small wooden box. Inside, wrapped in cloth, is a folding knife. The same knife James used to carve 14 notches into Thunderchild's bridge rail 60 years ago. A note is tucked into the cloth, written in James Thornton's careful handwriting. Sam, this knife carved 14 notches to remember what war costs. Now I give it to you. When I am gone, when you are gone, when everyone who served on Thunderchild is gone, this knife will remain. Let it remind future generations that victory is never free. That every ship destroyed was full of men who loved and hoped and dreamed. That the only heroism that matters is bringing your people home. Thank you for serving under my command. Thank you for keeping the story alive. Your captain. Sam reads the note twice. Then he carefully folds it and places it back in the box. I will donate this to the museum. Put it in the display with the 14 notches, so people can see the tool that made them, so they can understand. James Jr. smiles. That is exactly what he hoped you would do. They shake hands. Two men, two generations apart, bound by the legacy of a ship that should have been a mistake, but became a symbol. As James Jr. leaves, Sam returns to the bridge rail. He touches the 14 notches one last time, feeling the grooves cut into steel by a man who understood that remembering cost as much as forgetting. The sun is setting over Portsmouth Harbor. Thunderchild sits quiet in the water, her guns silent, her decks peaceful. School children will tour her tomorrow. Veterans will visit next week. Historians will study her for decades. But tonight she belongs to the ghosts, to William Parker and Harold Brooks, to Bobby Chen and the 47 survivors of Mohawk, to the 2,800 German sailors who went down with their ships, to Eleanor Thornton, who gave her life for grace, to James Thornton, who gave 40 years to service despite a body that fought him every day. To all of them, the living and the dead, the remembered and the forgotten, the heroes and the ordinary men who did extraordinary things because their time demanded it. Sam Chen, old and tired, and grateful to have lived this long, speaks to them in the gathering dark. Thank you for your service, for your sacrifice, for everything you gave so that we could be here. We remember. We will always remember. Somewhere in the harbor, a bell rings. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the ocean continues its eternal motion. And on the bridge of USS Thunderchild, the last tribal-class destroyer in the world, 14 notches catch the fading light and hold it like a promise. Some things are worth preserving. Some stories are worth telling. Some costs are worth remembering. This is one of them.